I want to ask you about one specific founding father, and the one that people always cite is the key deist, Jefferson, who writes the Jefferson Bible, goes through, removes all of the sections that he finds troublesome, particularly the sections relating to miracles. How should we view Jefferson's faith? Because he wrote the Declaration of Independence and obviously becomes president, and the Declaration of Independence is seen as, in many ways, even more foundational to the country than the Constitution. Lincoln obviously thought that you could only read the two in tandem, and it was for that reason that the Civil War was worthwhile and moral. So looking at Jefferson's faith, how should we adjudicate where Jefferson was in terms of his belief in God? Was he just a pure deist?
No, not at all. As a matter of fact, and let me hit real quick on what you said, Declaration and Constitution. You cannot separate the two. The Founding Fathers said you couldn't. They specifically said that. In the U.S. Code annotated today, the two documents you cannot violate with any law are the Declaration and the Constitution. So modern stuff, we've separated that because the Declaration has so much faith in it, the Constitution doesn't. The Constitution has a lot of faith, and I could easily point that out, but people think it doesn't. So in their minds, they separate the religious from the secular. And it is striking that the Constitution, Article 7, dates itself to the Declaration. It goes, every federal law signed President Trump, what he signed last week, doesn't go to the Constitution, it goes to the Declaration. So we've never separated those two till modern culture wanted to kind of secularize it. Going back to Jefferson, when people ask me about the Jefferson Bible, that question, I get, well, he cut out all the things he disagreed with. And then I started asking them questions. I said, okay, which Jefferson Bible are you talking about? What do you mean, the Jefferson Bible? Yeah, which one? You're talking about the 1804 or the 1821? There were two? Yeah, well, if they don't know there's two, I know they don't know what they're talking about. Then I ask, well, have you ever read either one of them? Well, no. Well, then how do you know he cut out the miraculous, supernatural? That's what everybody says. Right. So go back and read it. So if we go back to the 1804 version, he's in the White House, he's president, he takes two Bibles, he cuts out sections in the Bible, pastes them all together. Now, that's the first Jefferson Bible. And he did that largely, he had been given a friend, Peace, a guy named Peace gave him a sermon from a guy in Scotland named Bennett. And the guy in Scotland said, look, if you want to reach Native Americans with Christianity, do not give them a Bible. Because if you do, they might read the genealogies. They might read, and that's not what you want. He said, what you need to do is take the teachings of Jesus and give them the teachings of Jesus. Don't give them the whole Bible. And Jefferson, great idea. So what Jefferson cut out was what in Christian terms would be called the red letters of the Bible. So cut out the words of Jesus, pasted them all end to end. If you read that, you find Jesus healing the sick and raising the dead and casting out devils and all the miracles that are there. It's there. And so, okay, what happened to all this supernatural stuff that you said he cut out? Because it's there. And by the way, he did that. He gave that to some missionary friends. He was really close with Native Americans. He was really into wanting to share the Bible with them. And so he gave that to some missionary friends, said, this is much cheaper to print than the whole Bible. These are the teachings of Jesus. And instead of going through 4 teachings and 4 Gospels, it's got the teaching one time, so you don't read it 4 times. So it's what's often called a synoptic Bible. It is just a linear Bible on the teachings. So it has supernatural stuff all throughout. So I say, well, obviously you couldn't have been speaking about the 1804 Bible. You must have been speaking about the 1820 Bible. Have you ever read that? No. Oh, okay, let's talk about that. Because on all this that I'm telling you, this is all recorded in Jefferson's writings. These are in his writings. People look at the product, they don't read what he said or why he did it or anything else. They just jump to this characterization again. So the 1821, Jefferson starts writing so many of his friends. He said, the thing that helps you have limited government is having moral people. And when you have moral people, you have less need for outside government because you have more internal government. So he started reading the writings of every moral philosopher he could find. Pythagoras and Cato and Plato, all the guys. And he told friend after friend, he said, I've read them all, and I think the moral teachings of Jesus are better than any of those teachings. And so what he did in his own handwriting, he went through and picked 81 of what he considered the best moral teachings of Jesus. And he then pasted them end to end in a day book that he had. But because he spoke several languages, he also pasted the same teachings end to end in Latin and in Greek and in French. And so he would read all the teachings of Jesus, 4 languages. And so that's what he read on a daily basis. Nobody really knew he had that book until the Librarian of Congress, Cyrus Adler, in 1886 was talking to a grandson of Jefferson, and the grandson said, I've got his book on all the moral teachings of Jesus. And they said, really, we'd like to buy this. So Library of Congress bought it. Then in 1902, a Congressman, John Lacey out of Iowa, read this and said, this is the greatest collection of moral teachings we've ever seen. So he started writing op-eds about Jefferson Bible is what it became known as. And so he wrote op-eds, and in 1904, Congress took it and reprinted it and gave a copy to every member of Congress for the next 50 years and said, if you will live by the moral teachings here, you won't have ethical problems, you won't have corruption, etc. And so that's what's called the Jefferson Bible today. Jefferson's own handwriting, because the book is a reproduction of Jefferson's own notes, it's called The Life and Morals of Jesus of Nazareth. And so it has the great command, love God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, forgiving your enemies, kindness to enemies. It's got 81 moral teachings, and that's the Jefferson Bible. And they say, it doesn't have any supernatural stuff in it. It does, but that wasn't his purpose. His purpose was collecting moral teachings. So if you're telling me that Jefferson so hated the Bible that he eliminated supernatural, then first you got to explain what the 1804 is all about. Second, I'll show you all sorts of supernatural stuff because there's heaven and hell and angels and all sorts of stuff in the moral teachings of Jesus. So both of them have supernatural. But then I've got to ask you to explain to me why it is that Jefferson was a lifetime member of the Virginia Bible Society. If he so hated Bibles, why was he a lifetime member? And if he so hated Bibles, why was one of the 3 largest contributions he ever gave was to a Bible society to help spread Bibles? And why is it that he gave a full Bible to every one of his kids and grandkids when they learned to read? That was the first reading book he wanted them to have, was a full Bible. So I ask people, if Jefferson so hates the Bible, then how do you explain all this behavior? And the problem is, since about 1903, what's known as the Unitarians have said Jefferson is a Unitarian and he didn't like Jesus, and they've adopted him, but academically you can't sustain that position. And so when you look at truth and read Jefferson's writings, when you actually read both of the books, the Jefferson Bible, you come up with a completely different conclusion than what you know how it is with academics, they repeat each other. They don't go back to original sources, they quote each other. And so that's how the Jeffersons got a bad rap. As to his faith, he kept calling himself a Christian. Now, as a Christian, I would say probably not orthodox in some of his beliefs, but he certainly didn't run from that title. I would say from my standpoint, he's probably not a Christian, but that's not my decision. That's God's decision.